What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another live stream this week. Today, we are going to be talking about, you guessed it, the Samsung S95C versus the Sony A95L and who you think the MVP this year will be. Now, if you have a particular horse in this race, make sure you comment down below. And if you want to show some love for your city, make sure you rep that tonight by posting that down in the comment section down below. Now, I want to start this video off by saying thank you to everybody who's been patient and who's kind of been hanging out with me. For those who may or may not know, I've been going through a family crisis, so it's been a lot. And everybody who's, been very supportive and very nice and sending prayers and things like that, that's been absolutely wonderful. You guys are fantastic, so thank you for that. And we're just going to continue to rock like we've been rocking. Now, as far as television goes, we're getting ready to hop into peak season. As you know, March, April, all that good stuff. That's when we start seeing a lot of these televisions start releasing. Now, that immediately starts the question and conversation, the Samsung S95C versus the Sony A95L. Now, the A95L hasn't really necessarily launched yet or really given us any real details. We're still waiting for IFA 2023, obviously, but we know the Samsung is $4,400, basically almost $5,000 really, for the 77-inch variation. Now, as far as which one I plan on getting both of these bad boys, kind of like last year, and seeing what we have basically between one display versus the other, and if there have been any notable improvements over the others. So, of course, I have all the prior performance metrics documented, and we're going to be talking about that kind of thing. Now, also, I do want to send prayers out to everybody who is experiencing the train derailment thing. So if anyone lives near there and has been experiencing some issues, I do hope and pray that everybody is doing okay and your loved ones are safe. Now, I want to say what's up to Shercy. I want to thank you for being a member here tonight and every night that you have been and showing up and being a part of the community. Shout out to Kelly Ravad. You guys are fantastic. Now, we've got what's up, fam. You said love from your down under family. I appreciate that, brother. It's always cool to hear where you guys are from. So thank you for, again, just stopping by to show the love and enjoying the community that we all share and know and love so much. Now, there's been a lot of development around, obviously, this conversation between. Shout out to the Christian conservative. I thank you so much for your donation of $20, brother. It really does help out. I appreciate, again, on top of being a member, helping support going into this new year. As you know, these TVs are crazy expensive this year. $4,400 to run you just for a 77-inch. So again, your help is so appreciated, and I definitely want to send a special thanks to you for that. And if you have any questions for me, again, please feel free to ask, because this is definitely the time to do that, and I got you covered 100%. So it's one of those things where while there's not necessarily a whole lot of news, we are starting to see a little bit more. Like we see Amazon with their listing for the Samsung S95C with the new remote that they have, more rounded, that kind of thing, like I covered in the last video talking about the specifications. Now, if I'm being very honest with you, Sony will likely target more of the same of what they did last year. Now, I do believe that Samsung and Sony are kind of basically using the same exact panel, so I think we'll see very similar brightness levels from what we saw from the Samsung S95C. I don't think Sony would put themselves at such a disadvantage having purchased Samsung's panels to then be so significantly underpowered, especially given the feedback that we've all kind of been chiming off on, where we were like, hey, Sony, you've kind of got to get this together. Like, you're way behind Samsung with the S95B in terms of brightness. Now, enter an intelligent conversation here. Is brightness really everything? This year, everybody is ramping up the conversation of brightness more than we've ever seen before, and it's only going to intensify. And I think when we get so excited about the nit wars, we're not really talking so much about intelligent tone mapping and making sure highlights in the sky are placed where they need to be, or in any real area where you have a really strong, really beautiful highlight. That kind of thing needs to be properly mapped to what it's supposed to look like. And I think what Samsung tends to do is try to impress people with like global brightness from time to time, and that kind of accuracy does go amiss. And so the conversation of the MVP this year would kind of switch towards Sony really having a true shot here. All Sony has to do to come out ahead is really button up their motion and deliver a picture on par with what we've seen from them in the past. You know, if you really look back at my videos from even like years ago, all my biggest gripes with Sony is that they really just have no desire to compete in terms of motion. But they've always given us a bevy of options when we talk about color space options that you can force, that you can be creative with, calibration tools. It's really your playground, more or less. Now, of course, over the last couple of years, really, like honestly, the last two, Sony has kind of been taking a slide backwards in the sense that they've really just kind of been like, we're going to have a toggle that doesn't work or it does the total reverse. And I've had these issues that I've shown off on camera where I'm adjusting hue and saturation, and that stuff just kind of falls apart and doesn't look very good. So that kind of thing really needs to be buttoned up this year. But again, if they can do that, right? If they can provide us with an excellent, exceptional picture quality like what we're expecting, and if they can keep that price in check, then they might actually be able to pull ahead. Now, of course, that's not going to stop, Value Electronics and all the other AV YouTubers from forming their own opinions that Sony is the best, point blank, period. And there's just nobody that can argue that with them. That's fine. People can believe what they want. I'm more like, did they actually improve? And I want to know if that's something like you guys are after as well, because it's like every year these TVs win awards, but nobody ever says how they did last year. You notice that? Like you bought a C1, for example. Who here in the room of the AV community is really talking about the C1 anymore? Everybody like forgets these TVs after they've made their money, after they've made their YouTube views, and they're good. They're like, hey, I got my money, I got my bag, next product. Hey, buy this as well. This is amazing. It is honestly the most foolproof business model if you think about it. All you got to do is show up with a smile on your face and say, guess what? I love this product. This is an amazing thing. Feel good about this product. Buy this product. Love it like I love it. And then when it's discontinued next year, feel good about this new product that I'm going to put in front of your face. See, I don't do that crap here in Quantum TV. Like, I really don't. And that's what the membership is all about. As you guys know, like, I support TVs that are way, way, way past their prime at this point, like the Sony X900E. I'm working on revamp settings for that. Again, the Q8FN, I'm working on revamp settings for that. I keep these TVs for the life and I try to really rev them up to get to a whole nother level. And so that's the whole thing that I really appreciate as far as like doing this job with you guys for as long as I have been. That's the part that gets really fun here. Now I'm going to dive into the chat here and answer some of your questions. And if there's something particular you want to ask me, whether it's your favorite team for Super Bowl or whatever, or anything, now's your time. Feel free to ask any question you want. We're going to dive right in with Nick J. What's going on, man? Hope you're having a good night. Nick J says, hi, Q. Hope all is well. All is as well as can be. We've got, I'm going to mess your name up, so I'm not even going to try. You said, hi, LG G3 77-inch with MLA, not a contender. Well, the MLA technology doesn't change the WOLED technology, so it's not necessarily like it's not a contender. If you remember back to one of my prior comparisons that I recently did with WOLED versus QD-OLED, if you haven't watched it, definitely make your way over to the comparison playlist. It's an excellent visual representation on what you can see between those two differences between the technologies. And really it boils down to the quantum dots making a massive difference in primary colors, additive colors, things like that. And that really translates to everything, seeing a kick up in intensity. And then you add an extra amount of brightness behind that, right? And now you're really starting to see color volume and changes that really drastically change what TV used to mean for us. And I think that for us is going to be huge going forward, right? Now, if you then take that concept a step further, right? And then you enter in something like better motion and solid processing for low bitrate content, then you're into like monster tier territory. And that's really where we're trying to get it. Now, Sony does have a problem this year competing against LG. So I don't want you to hear like they are WOLED and they're immediately out of the race, because that's just not how it works, right? Because as you saw, the LG C1, it's more than capable of competing with something like the S95B. And if you see on the revamp settings, if you join, become a member, and you have a C1, so many G2 owners, C2 owners, C1 owners are trying that setting out, and they're like blown away by how reds actually now look more red. So it's not like you can't do it. You just really have to sit there and give it the extra effort and attention, but it totally can be done. And once it's done, it's a magical. You're going to want something, right? You're going to want to have something there. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, as you go on, you're going to want to make sure that all the things that you have, as far as feature wise, are being offered. Now, our little OBS program here just dropped out. So if there was any lapse as far as audio or whatever, I do apologize for that because, OBS is doing whatever it wants to do tonight. So we've got Kelly Ravad says agree. We've got Sony is too expensive. I definitely agree there. But to be fair, Samsung isn't exactly quite affordable right now at $44.99. And I always say this, like, all the YouTubers like myself and, you've got FOMO, you've got Digital Trends, HDTV Tests, Be the Installer. We're all going to run out and buy these expensive ass TVs, right? But how practical are they really outside of like maybe you watching a YouTube video and being like, oh, that's really cool? They're not really practical. And so, like, again, a big push for this year for Quantum TV anyway. I can't speak for the other guys, but for what I'm doing, it's about practicality, making sure like we're getting to things that everybody can more or less afford and enjoy. Because I really get so annoyed of like basically like everybody gets shut out and kind of locked out of being able to enjoy content. And I think that's really annoying because it's like, unless you have like essentially like a $5,000 TV, you can't really enjoy what we're kind of putting down. Now, that's not every TV, but again, the goal is to help you guys obviously find the best for the money. And again, you're talking to a guy that knows what it's like to be absolutely broke. So, like, I'm not one of those disconnected people that's like, yo, you just need to save more or, spend more because now the times have changed. You don't need a lot of money to get a damn good TV. And I think that's going missed a lot in this conversation of, hey, buy, buy, buy. Meanwhile, inflation is at an all-time high and everybody's trying to save where they can. And I can respect that. And I think that's one of the things that, like, again, my focus this year is making sure everybody wins this year. So, yeah. We've got Daryl McKenzie. What's going on, man? You said, it's sad. I've waited a year for all the good things about the S95 Samsung to bring out the 77-inch QD OLED. They bring it out with a sky-high price. Yeah, and that's one of the things that kind of upset me as well. It's like when you come out with something that's so out of reach for literally Commonwealth, I don't know who has like $5,000 essentially knocking about their bank to just throw away. Like, you got to understand, we're still paying rent, mortgage, insurance, car payments, whatever, living our daily life with all of our expenses. And they want you to have an additional $4,000 on top of that just to afford their stupid little TV. It's going to sit there and rot. Nobody's going to buy it. I mean, yeah, sure, you're going to have a couple of rich people buy it, but the rest of us, we're not buying that garbage. We're going to go for something that we can afford. And again, that's the thing that really bugs me with this whole AV industry. They use these technologies that they're repackaging basically and saying, hey, we're giving you HDR, we're giving you brightness, we're giving you quantum dot color. It's like, yeah, but it's been done before and it's cheaper right now if I were to buy this TV on sale. And it's really going to be hard to justify. I'm not going to lie, like not picking up a Samsung S95B. I've seen sales, guys. Like, I've seen sales. And sometimes these sales are like $11.99, $12.99 for the 55-inch. It's ridiculous. And that's not refurbished. That's great, right? And I think it's going to be harder to justify coming in at a much higher price tag just for the extra screen size. Because again, nobody is talking about in the midst of, hey, you want a bigger TV, go bigger, go bigger. Nobody tells you that all you're doing is blowing up an image past its native resolution. You're not replicating the proper resolution for that size, right? And you run into these situations where you're like, man, my TV's really blurry. I don't really like it. Doesn't look very good over cable. Well, that's because you're taking a 480p, 720p, 1080p image and you're blowing it up to damn near billboard sizes. It's not necessary. But that's what this fad does. It almost gives us this buyer's remorse and constantly keeps us hooked into this cycle of like, hey, you want to upgrade. You don't have a big enough TV. That's just totally nonsensical when you think about the source that you're pulling from 9 times out of 10. Especially true when you're streaming. So yeah, while it is sad that they came in at a sky high price, I definitely think that we will see a whole heck of a lot more options that the rest of us can afford. And don't you worry about a thing because I'm going to be covering it every step of the way. Now we've got I still have the LG C9. I hope LG steps it up with MLA a bit. I don't doubt that LG will step it up because, again, they're throwing out better brightness, and that's going to obviously add an impact as far as color volume and color in general. But being limited and not having quantum dots is going to hold LG back because for all their talks of brightness, they're not talking about improving color this year. That's going to really hurt them if all they did was add brightness to WOLED because, as we know, when you add white and you just make more brightness happen, it's not going to necessarily change the dynamics of color. It dilutes color on WOLED, and we don't want that happening, right? So I think they've really got some proving to do at the very least. And then also, it's going to leave a sour taste in everybody's mouth. While everybody's talking about the LG G3 with their MLA technology, that's cute and everything, but the C3 will not have it. The B3 will not have it. The A3 will not have it. A lot of their more affordable, everyday, like super popular TVs are just kind of left with last year's performance. And then the conversation becomes, do you really need to upgrade to the newest model when the last year's model was just as good? And again, last year's model in a lot of cases is probably going to be good enough for a lot of people. Say like TVs are a lot like a franchise video game. You're always a year behind, right? So you're going to buy in 2023 for 2022, right? You're going to be looking at all the options in 2022 and catching them on crazy sales and walking away with them. And then 2024, same thing with 2023. I don't ever recommend really just going in unless it's like a rare unicorn type situation, like a day one Samsung S95B, zero firmware whatsoever on it, like what I've got. I really couldn't fathom just jumping in and just buying brand new just because. They've really got to like prove that they're changing things. But at least that's my perspective. What's going on, Craig? I want to give a shout out to Craig for being an active member here in the community, showing all the love and being super supportive on all of my content that I make here. Like, it really means the world to have somebody that supportive constantly show up to these videos every single day. And that, my friend, is something I really appreciate you for. So thank you, Craig, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Kelly Ravad, it's always good to see you as well. Thank you for being our absolute best moderator when it comes to these live streams, just showing up, holding it down, doing the absolute best. You said, good to see you all tonight, and I appreciate you as well. We've got thank you, Quantum. Really appreciate you. And I appreciate your time and coming out and hanging out with us as well. Dio Clark, what's going on? Thanks for being a long-time member here. Now you're saying waiting for the day Hisense gets better. Because when you really think about it, right? I have OBS that dropped out here for a second, waiting for it to show on my end that it didn't fully drop out, or at least that it picked back up again. Oh, I'm telling you, OBS is doing whatever it wants tonight. All right, so we're good. Now, in terms of the processing thing, that is such a big thing because they have banding, they have posterization, but if they add smooth gradation, for example, a lot of that stuff can be fixed if they get serious about, dynamic tone mapping, precision color mapping, things like that. They absolutely will stomp everything because I still, to this day, have people that'll look at the A8G, or rather the U8G, and really truly believe that it is a TV that it is not. And I think that's like one of the biggest things that is like, it goes to show you how far Hisense has come in such a short period of time. And this year they aim to get even better. Don't know what that's going to be like, but I'm hoping maybe they listen to some of the feedback that I've given on the past reviews that I've given. But of course, we're going to be doing full breakdowns. And of course, there's a new editorial style and a new presentation style that I think you guys will be able to appreciate, and it'll be far more digestible. So whether you're like a super technical guy or you're somebody that just has no real experience with this year, the big focus here at Quantum TV is making sure like everybody's taken care of, okay? Like, again, no experience required kind of thing. Because I think a lot of the mistakes that we make as AV YouTubers, we know what we're talking about when we're talking about nits and brightness and all these things, but we don't really explain it in a way that is easily digestible by, like, let's say maybe our grandmothers or grandfathers. That's something that I really want to start doing this year to really represent everybody. So hopefully that's something that will be appreciated and seen as time goes on. Now, shout out to Chief Ted. I want to thank you so much, brother, for being a member for 6 months here. That really does help a lot, and it means a lot. Now, you say, hey, Q, I bought the S95B. Love it. Amazing TV, but I've been curious about the Q and 95B because of its insane brightness. Do you recommend that TV? No, I don't recommend the Samsung QN90B because right now the native contrast ratio is just too low on these Samsung QLEDs. Now, I believe this is done so that the, of course, step up model, the Quantum Dot OLEDs, look a lot better. And of course, their 8K models and things like that tend to shine a little bit more. But Samsung has been having a bit of a problem in terms of keeping their native contrast tight enough that when you slap local dimming on it, it doesn't fall apart. In English, your nighttime viewing is going to usually have a lot of blooming on these QLEDs. And then when it doesn't have a lot of blooming, then there are all these other issues that kind of pop up where, yes, it's bright, but it's not accurate color. It's overly bright. You can't use a lot of it. Sometimes you have to turn most of the brightness down, and it just kind of becomes a moot point. So it gets to this awkward positioning where it's just kind of like, hey, I can't really use this the way I wanted to. And then, of course, you still don't have like the black level benefits of something like the Samsung S95B, which is cheaper and you get more screen comparatively. If you compare, like, for example, a 65-inch QN90B to a 65-inch S95B, you're going to get more screen for the money. So I think you have an S95B, you are absolutely perfect. Honestly, you've got the pinnacle of technology, and it really, frankly, right now doesn't get any higher. Now, Craig says that the TCL 75-inch is the cheapest. And I think that's also good to keep in mind for those who maybe want a cheaper TV right now. Grandmaster Yoda says, I want a QN900B, but so damn expensive. And again, that's kind of like why I say the sweet spot is really 55 to 65 inches for a television. It just is. 55 if you want to save a lot of money and you have maybe a smaller room, something a little bit more intimate, you can do that. If you have maybe a living room type situation, 65 would pretty much solve most living situations. Unless, of course, you're in like a mansion with cathedral ceilings and you're like 20 feet away from your television, 25, 30 feet away. Well, then, of course, you're going to need a bigger screen. And you guys that have, 3D cinemas in your home and like all this crazy stuff that you build up, of course, that's an entirely different animal. That, of course, requires an entirely different setup. But for most of us, we're fine with what we have. And I think just stick to the smaller sizes and you should be good. So even though it's expensive, I really wouldn't focus too much on that, especially since, much like all the other QLEDs, the black levels aren't extraordinary. They're not going to break the mold. You're still going to have blooming. You're still going to have all the issues that we don't want. And for that, honestly speaking, you're better off just waiting for this year's implementations from maybe some other companies. Now, Walter Sutton, what's going on, man? You said, do you have settings for the Sony X900E 55-inch for PS5? No, not PS5. Unfortunately, I just have not had the time to hook up the PlayStation 5 specifically on the Sony X900E, but something definitely worth looking into. And again, you've been one of my absolute long time, people here. I remember you back in like 2018, 2017. So it's literally insane sometimes reading some of these names, and it's been like, yo, you've been rocking with the channel for a while, and I really appreciate it. You've even been a member at one point. Like, it's just absolutely incredible. So while I don't have settings specifically for PS5 now, that kind of stuff definitely is going to be on the list of things to do as we start progressing through the year and start doing these comparisons and things like that. We've got love your new LG C1 settings on both my 55 and 75-inch TVs. Thank you, Shirsi. I really appreciate that. It's good to always get the feedback on that. Honestly, the feedback has been pretty overwhelming for those new LG C1 revamp settings. Like, I was just putting them out thinking like, hey, hopefully just even if like 20 of you guys see what I've done, that would be great. And pretty much everybody has been like, yo, what the hell? How did you do this? You broke the mold again. Like, that is so humbling. You have to understand, is like somebody who creates content, to have people like really see what you did after like hours and hours of reference matching and figuring out what the reference points for certain things should be for perceptual accuracy. In English, making the picture look damn good. It's so like rewarding. Like, it's so nice to have that, dude. So I really do appreciate your feedback. What's going on, Handycart, man? It's been a minute. I really appreciate you stopping by. And I also appreciate you texting me and, just being supportive as well. Holding down the Discord. I see you, man. I appreciate it. We've got Mary. What's going on? You said I have a 65-inch 2018 Samsung Q6 DR. I'm not familiar with the DR, but I am familiar with the Q6 series. You said, and my only issue is really dark scenes. I would love to upgrade to a newer 65-inch TV, but there are so many problems with TVs right now. It's overwhelming. Well, Mary, if you get with me on the comment section in this particular video or in the community tab, more preferably, because I see that a lot faster, I'm able to help you out and get you exactly what you're looking for. But seeing how you did make a live stream tonight, if there's something particular that's maybe a little overwhelming, just ask me and I'll help you digest it while I'm here tonight. Hisense UAG 100%, most definitely. Do you think the top Hisense TV is a good replacement for the Sony X900E or X930E? That's a really good question. You said motion is everything, and my E's do great with motion. The black levels just suck after updates, as of course I'm sure most of us are aware that that is a reoccurring theme. So, is it a replacement, a good replacement for the X900 series? The 900E for sure. So, motion is not going to be as good as the 900E. I'm just going to warn you that's not something that you're going to find unless you get to like maybe the LG C1. But as far as picture quality, the picture quality is substantially better in a lot of areas. And I say areas because the 2017 series, the problem that I keep facing when I compare it, and it's not unique to, let's say, Hisense even. I can compare this to any newer Sony that you point at, and it won't be able to compete as good as these TVs or to these TVs as it should, because Sony had something called auto HDR remastering, object-based HDR remastering, and basically it worked in SDR in cinema home mode. When you lower the brightness low enough, you start getting insane contrast and detail that just blows everything away. And I have yet to this day found a single manufacturer that can compete like perfectly with that. And it's such a monstrous feature that, honestly speaking, your 900 series are still good. Hisense is not going to be able to compete with that level of processing. Honestly, Sony can't even do it anymore. So I think that's going to be one of the big letdowns, and it's going to be disappointing if you're expecting comparable experiences coming from one end of the spectrum going up to the other. That's going to really upset you. And again, motion has been one of those things that every manufacturer across the board, more or less, besides LG, has kind of shrugged their shoulder at, like, we don't really care. And a lot of it is, purists kind of saying we want soap opera effect off. We don't even use the feature. So they're not trying anymore. And most everyday people aren't chiming off about anything other than Dolby Vision and Apple AirPlay. So that's where all the focus is going, online only features and things like that. And if this keeps going, then you're going to keep seeing TVs with bad motion and not necessarily getting the 930, the 930, the 900E type experiences. So on the one end, if you want brightness, you want color, and you want deeper black levels, Hisense is going to deliver that for you. But if you want something that's going to replace that motion, you're going to have to maybe go up to the C1 for now. I will keep you posted. Definitely stay with me, man. If you've got questions about that, I will literally help you every step of the way with that. We've got I'm going to mess your name up. Anderson. It looks like it's pronounced a special way, but I'm not going to butcher it any more than I already have. You say, hey, Quantum, is HDR10 only up to 1000 nits? And then you say, if so, can you explain how HDR10 shows the brightness above 1000 nits on these TVs? Well, I think the big thing to understand with HDR, two things. One, HDR has a couple different forms. So, yeah, HDR10, it doesn't just stop at 1000 or what is it? 1000 nits. You can go as high, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, don't quote me off the top of my head. I think it goes as high as like 5000 nits for HDR10. I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember right now. But I do know that, again, you have all the headroom you need. But the most important thing to remember with HDR, any HDR that you're watching right now, most of the time, if you're watching on, let's say, a modern television and you're watching like a modern commercial, a modern TV show, every single camera has a log profile and it is being graded in post-production to show you that dynamic range, kind of like I was saying in my HDR versus SDR video. And if you don't believe me, go buy, for example, a Sony A9600 or whatever. You'll see HLG. You'll see these profiles. Go buy a Canon camera. You'll see these log profiles. And the reason I'm pointing that out is that is dynamic range. That is HDR. That is showing you the stops of dynamic range, the difference between the deepest black and the purest white. That's what's doing it. Don't focus so much on the brightness and the nits. that is almost immediately what they try to do. They try to say, oh, we've got 1000 nits. And honestly, I never understood why they tried to say that you need more brightness to see dynamic range. It is probably one of the dumbest things I could have ever heard, because dynamic range, in essence, is literally just the difference between the deepest black and the purest white, and all the stops in between. You're not trying to get the brightest image on Earth. Now, of course, having brightness helps you see different details, like a brighter white, but it's not necessary if you're just trying to see a wide amount of dynamic range. Again, and you can test this theory out when you talk to people. Go take a tour to your local news station or to somebody who's doing post-production work. You'll see what I mean when I tell you color grading is a big part of the process, and that is done most of the time converting log into SDR footage that's viewable, but you don't lose the information gathered onto that image sensor. That's very, very important, and nobody talks about that. So, and on one end of the spectrum, brightness, of course, helps modern HDR, because what TVs tend to do when we are in HDR10, for example, they'll dim everything down. I don't know why they do this, and they desaturate the crap out of the colors. They believe that by returning it to the original log format look, right? I'll call it a look, okay? That is HDR. That is the true dynamic range. Wash out all your colors, make everything flat like a log image. And if you think I'm crazy, all of you right now, Google a log image and start opening up HDR on your TV without any adjustments whatsoever, and you'll see I'm exactly right. That's pretty much all they're doing. They're flattening it out to a log image. So hopefully that kind of helps. If there's further questions that you have, then by all means, I'm here to help. You helped me get my TV, and you said loyalty. Absolutely, man. I'll help you as many times as I've got to, brother. There's no doubt about that, and I definitely appreciate the loyalty. We've got any idea on how to set in-game HDR peak brightness settings for Sony TVs? Are Sony TVs using always-on tone mapping since they do not support HGIG? Well, I don't really know if there's a particular way that like you can force that kind of thing. I genuinely don't even use HDR, if I'm being honest, because of what I just kind of mentioned earlier, how SDR most of the time can give you even a better image in prior videos and things like that we've talked about. I literally, every time I'm playing something, I disable HDR. It's not worth it in most cases because it doesn't really work as suggested, if you will. But essentially, you have the option to do better gradations on the newer Sony, or you can do, like, I think it's like better color or something like that, or brightness or gradation preferred, something like that. So you have the option to make it a little bit brighter. And of course, Sony has their auto tone mapping that they do on PS5 with certain select televisions. So if that's something that you like wanted a Sony and you were like serious about it, you could just make sure you're pairing it with what they say will tone map correctly exclusively for PS5. So hopefully that helps. What's going on, NF? You said, what's your opinion? LG C2 versus S95B current firmware. Samsung S95B, because quantum dots are just not being defeated by the LG C2. The clarity is exceptional on the LG C2. However, the motion is just not where it needs to be. Also, the reduction, or rather removal, of the OLED Motion Pro feature. Instead, we drop down to OLED Motion, which is the baseline entry-level feature. We're losing more, again, capabilities that we didn't have to lose. And I think that's the unfortunate part as time goes on with these TVs. So between the two, snag an S95B and you should be good. Now, we are talking about current firmware, and a lot of people have been asking about 1430. At this point, I want to let you guys know I am not doing any firmware updates. I know I've said this in prior videos. I really am just not doing it because it's my personal set, and I'm not risking going through what I've gone through. If you've had to see my last couple of videos, or at least had the chance to see them, you can see that I've had to return at least two of them because of firmware 1310 and 1420.1. Those firmwares are disgusting. They just make the TV worse. Motion got way worse. I did a video literally comparing it, showing it in real time. It's not worth it. If you're still updating your TVs, it is your prerogative to do so, and I totally respect your opinion on that. But for me, it is a no-go, and I will literally never be updating that TV ever. So hopefully that can kind of help you out there. Cannon Hawk, what's going on, man? You said, hey, Q, any information on the new S95B update? Yes, I just kind of answered that. So you say, some say it's an improvement. And again, if some people find an improvement on 1430, I'm just going to have to take their word for it. I won't invalidate their impression of it or their feelings on it because maybe that's true for them. But what I can say is I've heard something similar on 1420. Everybody was saying, hey, the new firmware makes it so much better. When I compared it, that was not the case. And it's almost like this placebo effect, not again to be disrespectful to anyone, but it's like when you have firmware that comes out, people immediately think like it's better or I see a difference. But when I take it in and I start testing it in the lab, trying to see like, yo, is it actually better? It doesn't get better. And for me, that's where I kind of bow out. We've got, I'm going to buy the C2 77-inch or the S95C. When I buy it, how do I know, how do I subscribe for the best settings? So to subscribe for the settings that I create on the channel here, there are two ways you can do it. The first way is you can go through the join button that would be next to the subscribe button or underneath it. You can also join through one of the various links that I tend to put out on videos from time to time or ask me for a direct link. You can also, again, just kind of go through the, what is it again? You can go through the community tab and just send a request that way as well. But again, it's really easy. Another way you can do it is going into the settings playlist, clicking on any video in the settings playlist, and then just subscribing that way as well. That would be like an immediate direct link to it as well. So if you needed those settings or you wanted settings, that's the best way. Do you believe these OLEDs are really going to touch 2000 nits based off of these rumors? Because an earlier user of the S95C on AV forum says that doesn't get brighter than 1400 from his test. Well, I think we need to kind of ask the question. Now, I don't know who you were talking to on AVS forum, but my question would immediately be, was that post calibration? Because brightness metrics do fall once we do a reference accurate calibration. And then also, what mode were you in? How many modes did you test? There are a few variables that I would have to ask to see how he got that 1400. Was it across every mode or, so on and so forth? So, again, I'll be doing all this testing and you'll have all the figures, all the numbers, and you'll know. You'll know. But in the meantime, I just think I do believe that they will touch 2000 nits. I think that is a realistic figure for what they're trying to achieve this year. Because the way that they've explained the science behind it, again, they've just made it more efficient than last year. Again, particularly focusing on that blue EL, and I think that's going to really enhance the brightness. So I do think they can do it. Thank you so much, Q. It's much appreciated, brother. Not a problem. Your opinion on what's better for live sports, the LG C series or the S95 series? I would say the LG C series, particularly the C1. You can find a 65-inch for maybe $16.99 right now, which is a really excellent price, and that'll give you excellent motion for sports. The S95 series struggles a bit in terms of motion when we talk about sports, looking a bit more digitized than the C series by comparison. So especially if you're watching NBA, dude, you're gonna have so much more fun watching all the fun happening with the trade wars right now on a TV that doesn't have as bad emotion as the S95. So I think you'll benefit from that. Shout out to Nick Ice. Thank you for becoming a new member here. Welcome to the VIP family. And again, if you have any questions, I'm here for you. Now we're going to scroll back up. I'm going to try to answer some more questions here. We've got Ricardo. What's going on? You say, I was about to buy the A95K and I watched your videos and ended up buying the S95B and the Q990B soundbar. You said for the same price of just the S95K and got $500 cash back. Very pleased. Yeah, I'd be pleased too if I save $500. That'd be exceptional. The Christian Conservative says, any news on U8G settings by any chance? Yes, I am working on revamp settings for the U8G currently. So the big holdup with the U8G is more or less making sure when I release the revamp settings, that it's just something that you can sign off on, put your name on and say, hey, this is a difference. I kind of set the bar a little high, I'm not going to lie, with the last setting. So trying to find something that has been a really big change has been difficult because it's been pretty minute. We are in a good place right now. But again, I will absolutely be revealing those new settings the moment that they are ready. So yeah, brother, they are definitely in the works. I'm just trying to finish them up and figure out how we can push the bar even further than where we are right now. And we're getting close. We're touching some excellent points, but I want to make sure that we're doing it right. So it takes time, but you know what I mean? Rome wasn't built in a day, and we're going to polish them up and give you something to really smile at when it's all said and done. Vel, what's going on? You said, what's your thoughts on film grain? I hate film grain. I think it is the most disgusting thing in the history of digital cinema. Why? Because who wants literally an artifact of like a camera not being able to perform? Like when you go outside, right, and you're trying to shoot in low light at night, do you really like all those disgusting fuzzies that show up on your image at night? No. Who the hell would like that? It's disgusting. And so these idiots, right, these limp dick majors, all these morons come out and they say, you know what? I'm going to slap film grain on everything. I'm going to lower your frame rates to fucking 24p. Oh yeah, that's what everybody wants to see. And it's just like if you only knew the history behind half of this digital cinema stuff, you know what I mean? It would really disgust you to see that they're just being lazy. Most of this stuff was because it was too expensive. Like 24p, they need to let it go. They need to get to higher refresh rates because that was literally done because it was effective and cheap. That was the only reason they did it. Back in the day, buying film was expensive. That's no longer the case when we can literally set a freaking frame rate in our cameras that are digital. They're just choosing purposely to nerf your image quality for no reason. I've said it for a long time. I think 30 FPS should be like the default. Like 30, 40 FPS should be the default for movies. But no. So yeah, film grain definitely still gets me salty to this day. I think it's disgusting, and I will always disable it from every game, almost spitting on the floor as I do so. I just have a very strong opinion about that, and it's just never changed. Spot on. You said so spot on Q on HDR. I thank you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hostile Sloth, what's going on? How's the ABL on the LG G2? I have an S95B, but returned it because of firmware. ABL on S95B when playing Fortnite, I would look at the sky and it would dim quite a bit. I think in terms of ABL, you're kind of in the same boat a lot of the time. Maybe the new ones will be better, but yeah, it just might end up being one of those things. I hope to see my question. I hope to see my question, but also love your channel. I don't know what you mean. Um, Simon, what's going on? You said I bought the KS 9000 because of you. Great movie watching years with that TV. And man, I tell you, I remember you back in 2016, bro. Like you've been like again one of the ultra long time people that have been like showing up on this channel. So thank you for that long time support. And may I just say, I'm like super jealous of you, by the way. Like you've got a KS 9000, you lucky duck, man. Like bro, that TV is so beautiful. Like seriously, the chrome, all of it, the logo illumination they don't do anymore. Like ugh. I got the KS 8000 and I regret still to this day not going up to the 9000 series cuz it's totally worth it for sure. We've got Kelly Ravad says, I'm sure you get this a lot, Q, but thanks again for not raising your membership price despite inflation. Keeping it $5 has been helpful. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very important thing as prices go up. I mean, like my biggest philosophy here is calibrations should already be done in the TV day one, and everybody should have their mind blown when you spend any amount of money on a television, right? And the fact that it's not done like that, I think is something that's so unforgivable. And then you've got greedy calibrators that go in there and they nerf everything, make everything washed out, and then they say, hey, this is reference accurate. These numbers tell you you need to like this and get used to it. And they even like gaslight the hell out of you when you know it's ugly and they say you need to train your eyes. How many of us have heard that one, right? You need to train your eyes to get used to seeing the dull colors, and after a while you'll notice it's so much better. I mean, could you imagine like if a woman approached you, just train your eyes to get used to looking at me? Most men would be unattracted to it. The same concept applies to women. I mean, you don't train your eyes. Something's either inherently good looking or it's not, right? And you either like it or don't. And I think for me, the big thing is keeping it $5, making sure everybody can afford it, and working with every single person on that VIP community that says, hey, listen, I want settings that does X, Y, and Z, and really giving you what you're looking for so that way your TV shines like never before and never raising the price. So I really appreciate, again, the acknowledgement on that. because sometimes it does come at a loss for us, but it is worth it in the end because everybody does win. And I think that's the important part. The years of high native contrast QLEDs are over. I feel that comment. That comment is so very real and so true because 9 times out of 10, we are getting contrast ratios 3,000 to 1, 4,000 to 1. It is a joke at this point. My KS8000, for anybody wondering, had a contrast ratio, I believe, of like 6,600, 6,500 to 1. And we're getting these so called $3,000 QLEDs that are mini LED with native contrast ratios of 3,000 to 1. That's damn near IPS territory, bro. Like, it's barely above that. I don't know. It's just not ideal. So, yeah, I definitely felt that comment 100%. What's going on, Vel? Thanks for stopping by tonight. You said, thank you, Q. I hate film grain, especially in video games, and people always say keep film grain on. Yeah, they can absolutely do that for themselves. And I'm sure maybe somewhere there's like a guy with like 50 cats in his mother's basement sitting there on Elden Ring, like, trolling everybody on the internet that doesn't like the game. Hogwarts Legacy for the win, by the way. And just kind of sitting there salty as hell. But I'll tell you right now, I can absolutely appreciate games without film grain because film grain is disgusting. And if you don't think I'm correct, let's just gather around and take all your family photos with no lights on and see all those fuzzies. Everybody loves the fuzzies. Like, it's not a thing. I promise you, everybody will be like, ooh, you need to upgrade your camera, which is why we do. I guarantee you, if you walk outside and you're trying to take pictures at night and your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever you bought is showing all that grain, you're not going to want to keep that phone. You're going to want a new one. And I think that's really the most important thing. It's just a defect. It's just a byproduct of not having enough light hit the image sensor and therefore grain is formed. It's not something that's like a stylistic thing like people try to make it seem. It's literally your camera can't perform. It's limited. So that's not like a good thing. Especially like me being a professional photographer, like that, bro, like that would destroy a business. Do you know, like if a professional photo was taken, right? For any billboard or for any headshot or for anything, and you show up with professional results, quotation mark around that. Like imagine a wedding, right? And all your pictures come back with grain in them, you would fire that photographer, want your money back, or sue them so fast. And I think we need to keep that in perspective when we talk about, again, visual quality of everything in general. Best TV for PS5, but avoiding the A95K as I think it's overpriced compared to Samsung and LG. The LG C1 is an excellent choice if you're trying to save money but still get a kick-ass picture. The Samsung S95B if you're after shock and awe. And waiting if you want the absolute pinnacle and best your money can get you. That would be my number one recommendation. We've got hey Q, I'm finding your tuning settings you provided for the C2 because gradient. Hold on, I'm finding your fine tuning settings you provided for the C2 cause gradient issues on the B2. I'm not sure I understand. Gradient issues. For gradient issues, you have a couple different options depending on the source. It will depend on what you're using. And then on top of the source, you'll have to then consider, color space and things like that. You can always go and use Rec 709. You can always turn it to auto instead of native. There are a couple different things, lowering saturation. It really would depend on what you're watching, how you're using it. Are you using it via HDMI or is it built in apps? So many variables as to how we change things. In terms of Nick, what's going on, man? You said, what do we have? Oh, I guess Chief Ted. Chief Ted says, why do companies nerf TVs because of people like Vince and Tio that are obsessed with the outdated reference accurate standards? That is one of the most straightforward things I think we can ask. Because let's look at the demographics, right? Samsung isn't the world's number one TV provider or seller because they are reference accurate. Everybody knows when you buy a Samsung, you're buying a vibrant picture that slaps, that makes everybody go, wow, oh, that's a pretty picture. But counteractively, if you look, try this out, it'll blow your mind. Let's look at everybody who pushes reference accuracy outside of Vincentio, right? Go to Portrait Displays. They have a YouTube channel. They don't really get a lot of views. You go to ABS Form. It's kind of more of the same thing. There's a reason for that. accuracy and people and talking about calibration is not a realistic thing. Most people in your personal life have never, ever had a TV calibration done and have likely never, ever heard of it. It's not a thing. It really is just not. It's a niche thing that a handful of guys that are really obsessed about TVs do. It's not normal. I'm just going to be very upfront about it. It's not normal. But at the end of the day, it makes people happy, right? Movie theaters do it, things like that do it, but it's not a big deal. Most people can get by with what they have. And I think this neutering of commonwealth displays, right? Regular everyday TVs that are affordable, right? You know, $600, $500, $1,000, even upwards of $3,000. The reason they do that nerfing nonsense on the word of a YouTuber is because that YouTuber is free marketing. If nobody tells you, take it from the guy with 79,000 subs. I got you. I'll tell you the game, bro. I'm getting offers. Bro, daily. People ask me to sell out. People are asking me to sell my channel now. Now that it's big enough, people are literally asking me. They're like, yo, I will literally give you X dollar amount to sell your channel to me, and I'll just take it over. That's where we're at now. YouTube has become such a brilliant marketing platform that people want to just take it over. And so all they have to do is get in the good graces of somebody like Vincent Teo with a large audience that clears 100K views a video and literally say whatever. It's easy. Bro, the formula couldn't be more easy. He makes money hand over fist, and so do they. It's a win-win. But in my book, I don't know, man. I don't like it. It's not my thing. Everybody has their thing. And hey, if that's his thing, I'm not going to put him down for doing his thing. Do your hustle, bro. That's you, man. But I'm definitely not going to defend any kind of nerfing or any of that. And I couldn't give a rat's ass about reference accuracy. I did the whole calibration thing. I got certified. I know how to calibrate. I don't care about it because nobody on earth cares about it. It's like when you do it and you get passionate about it, you're buying equipment, color meters, and all this shit. You really think like it's a big deal. And I did it professionally for a little bit. COVID happened. I couldn't do it anymore. But again, even when doing it professionally, I was still doing other shit like photography. And, because nobody lives on just that by itself. So that's just kind of the reality of this. You have to do other side hustles. That's why every prolific calibrator that you know of is on YouTube as well. Because the reality is you're going to need some sort of income outside of just that calibration business. That's a fact. That's why most of the guys do audio installations or TV wall mounting, because if they were to just do TV calibrations, most of them would starve. And that's the reality. Now, we're getting ready to wrap up the live stream here. I want to thank everybody for stopping by tonight, hanging out with us, and all that good fun stuff. If you have questions that didn't get answered tonight, definitely stop by next week, Friday, 7 p.m. through 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hang out with me and we'll do what we do. Now, I am ending the live stream a little before 8 o'clock, but again, I feel like I've covered a decent amount, and I got a bit of a cold here, so I'm going to need to take some medicine and relax or whatever. But again, thank you guys for stopping by, coming out tonight, having fun with us tonight. Thank you for the new members. Thank you, Christian Conservative, for donating $20. And for everybody who shows the love and shows the support on the daily videos, like Craig, I appreciate all the support you give on every video I upload, regardless of what it is, which is really amazing. So again, you guys are fantastic, and I hope you guys have a safe and blessed night. Again, our prayers go out to everybody who's dealing with the derailed train situation and all the chemicals in the air. Stay safe. Don't inhale that stuff. Maybe if you can, travel somewhere, get safe, that kind of thing. That being said, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and enjoying the live stream tonight. And look forward to the next video where we'll be talking about maybe reviewing Hogwarts Legacy and my whole experience with that. That's going to be fun in the next video. But I want to thank you guys again for stopping by tonight. And until the next video, I'll see you guys.